Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. Renowned landscape photographer and YouTuber Gavin Hardcastle pulls back the curtain on the driving forces behind his artistic journey. With a blend of humour and honesty, he reflects on his early struggles, the lessons learned from failures, and the joy of capturing nature's beauty in all its unpredictable glory. Gavin offers insights into his creative process, emphasising the importance of staying authentic and finding fulfilment in the art itself. We talk about the challenges and rewards of shooting in harsh conditions, offering a candid look at behind-the-scenes realities of landscape photography. From his approach to selecting and using photography gear to engaging with his audience and navigating feedback, Gavin highlights the balance between technical expertise and personal expression. He also discusses his future travel aspirations and how exploring new locations continues to fuel his passion for storytelling through photography. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Gavin. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Pretty good, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been something that you're a person I've wanted to talk to for some time, and I do have a great long list of people that I'm trying to talk to, and it's just trying to get everyone matched up and actually find a time to talk to people, and it's really wonderful having you. I want to talk to you today a little bit about inspiration and motivation, if I can, and beyond that, we'll just rattle away as need be. So, what inspired you to become a landscape photographer?
So basically, in this podcast, you want me to be a sort of inspirational, motivational speaker. Is that
No,
what I'm here?
no.
Because if it is, you might have picked the wrong guy. Because I like to keep it real and tell you the truth. So I might
Well,
actually
that's exactly what I want. I want to get to the person behind the YouTube channel and behind the photography.
yeah.
Talk to them.
Right, cut through the bullshit. All right, yeah.
Right.
So what was the question? What motivates me to go out and do what I
Yeah.
do?
Why do you do it? What is it that makes you do it?
Do you know, Grant? I ask myself that question on a regular basis, mate. Why do I do this?
Particularly
You
when
know,
it's minus 20 degrees outside.
do you know, not so much that. It's more,
Yeah.
I more ask myself that question when I'm doing like a 15-hour editing marathon and I've been sitting in this chair, especially in the summer when it's hot because I don't have any air conditioning. I'm just sitting here sweating, dehydrating, trying to get a weekly video out. That's when I ask myself, what am I doing? But I never really ask that when I'm freezing and shivering up on a mountain because, once you're presented with that view,
Yeah.
it's like, this is why I live, right? And even if I wasn't into photography, in fact, before I was even into photography, I still loved doing adventures. So, as a kid, I was always doing stupid adventures, throwing myself off cliffs. Me and my brother would do all kinds of stupid. We thought we were going to be movie stuntmen, right? So we'd be out in the wilds, just jumping off stuff and getting hurt and sometimes setting fire to things, whatever. We don't need to talk about that too
Well,
much,
you've
but
kind of achieved that aim, though.
well, yeah, a little bit on a small scale, not quite
Okay.
Hollywood, but I don't know if I would want to work in Hollywood now that I
Oh,
know what
no way.
Hollywood's really like. But no, I mean, you know, landscape photography is its own reward, right? You just get immediately rewarded by, first of all, you're out in nature, you're away from the office, you're away from all the bullshit of life, the stress, you forget about your taxes, you forget about your construction project or your health problems or whatever it is that's pissing you off at that particular moment.
Yeah.
Landscape photography to some degree it's escapism, which I guess really is that's what my channel is. That's what I do. It's vicarious escapism for others, right?
Sure.
But yeah, once you're out, I do need to get a shot. I want a shot, but sometimes even if I don't get a good shot or if I get like a mediocre shot, I'm still just happy to be out and about, in nature, out in the wilds, so, tasting the elements when you get snowed on and you get rained on. That's living, that's life, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
so that's why I do it. That's my reward. And I reckon that's probably why most people do it. But then, on those rare occasions when you get beautiful light and you get that fantastic shot,
Yeah,
well, that's
and the
just
light's where you want it to be, of course. You know.
yeah, it never is. Yeah, it never is it? But yeah, when it all comes together, well, now that's bonus material. Like that is you're already on a bit of a high because you're out doing what you love. But then when you get that shot, I am riding that high for days. So I guess it's almost like like these thrill seekers that jump, they do like you know parachute jumps or base jumping or those squirrel
Yeah,
suits or whatever. That they're at like the extreme end of the scale, and
sure.
I'm just sort of like halfway up the scale, taking pictures, but I don't need to like almost die. There's been a few stupid occasions, but I don't, I don't need to put my life at risk to feel
Yeah.
fulfilled, put it that way. It's just that is the ultimate reward, and I'll just keep doing it as long as I can until I can't physically get up those hills or, wade through those ice encrusted rivers at -20 and all that kind of stuff. I'll do it as long as I possibly can. What about you?
Yeah, I'm very much the same. It's about going out and experiencing life, and waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's something that I have to do because of old man bladder anyway. So while I'm up, I might as well go out and take a photo.
Yeah, that's a good motivation there. Yeah, you're up because once you're up, aren't you? I don't
Well,
know
that's
about you,
it.
but
Yeah, and very much so. Yeah, but
so
yeah, for
do you
me,
regularly only have like 3 or 4 hours of sleep, and you do have a face like a bag of smashed crabs then?
thanks for that. Yes, I do. Yeah, I'll never win
Yeah.
a contest, but that's not why I'm here. So
Yeah, so that's it in a nutshell. And I'm sure that I'm sure that's not really that illuminating or new to most people. Most people probably who are listening to this podcast who are landscape photographers, I guess it's pretty much the same deal for
yeah.
everybody else, really.
Yeah. Well, I have had some people say some interesting things about why they started photography. Some of it was travel, but I actually came across a guy who was right into competition and competitive photography. And personally, that's anathema. I can't be bothered actually polishing a bird that I've taken into such a shape that I'm willing to put it into a competition.
No, no, and I guess the only competition that I have is with myself, right? Like
Sure, sure.
especially if you fail at a particular location, like let's say there's a particular viewpoint that's quite hard work to get to,
Mm,
that's not too far away that you can only get there every few years. Maybe you can get there once or twice a year.
sure.
If I keep going and failing and I get crap shot or I get a slightly better shot and then I'm just going to compete with myself and just keep going
Yep.
until I feel like I've got the shot that I had in my head or that I really really imagined as a perfect shot and once I've got to that point I almost quit on it. I almost like, okay, I've achieved the maximum I could get for that location.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I'll just kind of like put it to bed until like 2 or 3 years later, I'll see somebody else's picture that's 10 times better than mine because they got triple rainbows and unicorns and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, then I've got to go back. And
Yeah. No,
so,
I get that. I have a place similar to that where I just keep going back, and the conditions I've had good, I've had terrible, and I've had mediocre conditions there, but I've never had amazing conditions there.
yeah,
But there's another beach just up the road from there that I went to, and it was the first time I'd gone. It's a fair hike to this. We have these rock pools here in Sydney. There's about 45 of them, and they were built in the Depression era, and they're usually just sort of concrete jutting out into around rocks, jutting out into a little natural bay or something near a beach. And the only people I ever see are rock fishermen, other photographers, or the occasional mad swimmer that's up at stupid o'clock before the sun. But I went there, and the sky was just this beautiful dappled cloud. sun hadn't come up and it just went bang. It went red, it went orange, it went purple. It was
Oh,
just amazing. I haven't been back there for 2 years simply because I don't think I'm going to get a better set of
no.
conditions.
Well, so why
But the
bother?
other
You
place, I keep going back. I've been there about 12 times and I've still never achieved that pinnacle that I'm looking for.
Yeah, it burns, especially when you do a big long drive, like if you're doing like a 4 or to 8 hour drive
Yeah.
and you've done it I used to get that a lot with the west coast of Vancouver Island. Whenever we had storm season, which is kind of like November to March, you got these big Pacific swells that come in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like storm watching out there is like the thing to do, right? It's what the wealthy people do. They'll fly in from wherever to come and watch waves for 4 days or whatever. So I would drive from one side of the island to the other anytime there was some big swells, and it just never was quite what I wanted until I think it was either like my last or my second to last visit to the West Coast. And finally, I got the conditions and I got the shot and the light was good. And it was 10 years of going back and forth and failing. 10 years for,
Yeah.
for one shot. But I was riding that high for days after getting that shot.
So, do you do pre-visualization? You sort of mentioned you're looking for a particular shot or set of conditions or certain light or whatever. Are you actually pre-visualizing before you go to a location about, okay, this is where I want to get to? Do you do a lot of planning? I mean, obviously, a big trip like Iceland or whatever, you got to know where you're going because otherwise you're going to waste a lot of time. But
Yeah, I'm
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 interested
guilty.
more in your local,
Yeah,
photography.
well, either way, I'm guilty of being a bit more spontaneous and sort of flying by the seat of my pants and not doing a ton of research.
Sure.
Like whenever I go out shooting with Michael Shainbloom, he's definitely of the generation of apps and data, right? And
Yeah.
so it's really quite convenient for me because I'm just like, I know I refuse. I refuse to research this. I refuse to even install any of these apps. I've got one app and that's windy.com and it checks my
Yep.
weather and that's it,
Yeah.
right? So it's good when I go out with Shane Bloom because he's got all the data, he's got all the apps, he knows everything before we even get there. And I'll just ask him, oh, what about this? Oh yeah, don't worry. Well, when things are left to me, it is far more lax, right? As long as the weather is not like either total sideways rain or worse, blue skies with no clouds whatsoever and no
Not a puff of
weather
wind.
coming in,
Yeah.
and then I just won't bother. But if it's anything else, then I'll just go. And I mean, I've written about this in my books so many times. I've gone out where you do check the weather and it says it's going to be this, and you go there and it's absolutely wrong. It's completely wrong, right?
Sure.
And that can go one way or the other. That can be disastrous or it could be absolutely fantastic. So over the years, because I've checked weather and stuff like that, I've kind of found that in some circumstances it's almost pointless because it can often turn out to be total bullshit. And some of those times where the weather and the apps and the data were telling me, don't go, just don't go. It's going to be a
Mm.
bad idea. I've gone anyway, and it's been fantastic, right?
Yeah.
So my planning is pretty piss poor, I'll be honest with you. And then what was the other question? You said, do you do a lot of research and planning? Was there something else that you asked there
No,
about
no,
that?
that was pretty much it. And it just goes to, are you a planner or
Well, the only way that I really can pre-visualize a concept of a shot is if I'm already familiar with the place. So I'll
yeah,
know, okay, there's a cliff there, there's a tree there, there's an interesting rock formation there. So once you are familiar with the camera angles and you've shot things many times from different angles in different weather, you kind of know what you can get away with, or you kind of know what the ideal would be. So, like on Vancouver Island, there's this place called San Joseph Bay near Cape Scott.
mhm,
And there's these sea stacks that just come out of the sand, right? In this little tiny little peninsula. I don't know if you call it a peninsula or an inlet, but there are periods throughout the day in certain seasons where when the tide comes in, it just clears out all of the footprints because people walk in and amongst these stacks. They're just
yeah,
like these weird tall cylinders with trees coming out the top. But every time I've been there, footprints everywhere. Every single time I've been there more times than I can count. It's possible. I've seen pictures of, the tide comes in, it's a certain height, has
Yep.
to be a certain ferocity, right? If it's really weak, not powerful, it won't get rid of the footprints.
Yeah.
So stuff like that, that's kind of the sort of stuff that I pre-visualize. It's like that's what I want. And you just keep going back until you get those conditions. And so if I was going to go back there now, I would check the weather because I want either at post high tide, like it has to be just after high tide,
Yep.
but not at midnight, right? Yeah, there has to
Yeah.
be some light, or it has to be like a foggy day, right? And so if you have familiarity with certain places, you know little details like for example, that particular spot only gets foggy in the summer. It's only on the hot days because the heat from inland basically hits that cold Pacific air and it creates this fog. And
Yeah.
quite often that fog does not end up on a forecast, right? The forecast will say, oh, it's
Fog
bright.
forecasts are rubbish. You can never forecast
Yeah.
when.
It'll just say, oh, it's going to be bright blue sky, right? Which it might be at noon, but for the first 3 hours of the morning, first 4 hours, it's dense fog. And so that's the sort of thing that I pay attention to. But you do need that local knowledge and that experience of having gone there multiple times to know that these little phenomena occur. And that's one of the spots I would love to go back to.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember the first landscape photo you captured that made you feel this is it? This is what I want to do for the rest of my life? And
Oh
what was
yeah,
that moment
absolutely.
like?
I absolutely can. Well, so I was on the island of Maui and I was up, I think you pronounce it Haleakala, which is the
Hmm?
mountain that has this crater. Well, they call it a crater. I'm not sure if it is an actual volcanic crater. Maybe it was at one point, but when you get up there and you look down into it, there's all of these cones, these other little ancient volcanic eruptions that have happened. You see these volcanic cones everywhere. And I went up there for a sunrise. It was the first sunrise that I'd ever done. And I'd been reading up on landscape photography and I'd read that golden hour or just after sunrise, just before sunset would give you this certain quality of light, right? And I thought, yeah, can it really make that much difference? That's how innocent and naive I was,
We all
right?
start somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was it. And so I drove up there at 3 o'clock in the morning. That was my first, you get up at 2 o'clock, you have your coffee, you have your plop, little scoff, and then you start driving up these switchbacks. And that was like the first time I ever did that. That whole thing that we now do all the time and take for granted is just normal.
Yeah.
That was my first one. And my camera was crap. I didn't know how to use it. I was shooting in auto. I knew nothing. Didn't know anything about. All I knew was how to focus. That was it. Knew nothing about dynamic range or even processing. Nothing. And went up there and I took this shot, which now I look back at it, it's total crap, right? I look at it and I can immediately see that difference between a midday shot or an afternoon shot versus the quality of the light, right? I was
Yeah.
convinced immediately. So as soon as I saw it on the camera, it's like, oh, right, yeah. So that's
That's
what they
what
talk
that
about in
means.
the books, right? And
Yeah.
that's like visual evidence. You've done it. You've achieved it. The fact that I got it back on the computer and it was kind of like totally blown out highlights and blocky shadows, whatever. I didn't care, but I'd learned that it was true and that you could get these beautiful shots if you just timed it right, you worked hard and you got there at the penultimate moment. And that's what I did. So that was kind of like the catalyst, that was like, okay, maybe I should get a bit better at this and maybe I should learn. And then I don't know if it was the same year or maybe a few months later, it might have been a year after, whatever. I decided I'm going to get a proper camera, right? Because I think that first one was a Nikon. I don't know if it was a D7. I can't remember the numbers. They have
Yeah.
so many numbers. It's an old crop sensor Nikon digital SLR. And so then my next one, I thought, right, I'm going to buy a full frame. Everyone's got these full frame cameras with zoom lenses. So I bought a 5D Mark
Yep.
and it came with the 24 to 105 EF lens. And I bought it just before a trip to Cambodia, right?
Hmm.
So went to Cambodia and I was taking all these handheld shots and I thought they were just beautiful. Like the the composite. I had a bit of an eye for composition then. I'm way better now, but I had a little bit of a clue, right? I took all these pictures and there was stormlight and horses and reflections and these beautiful monuments that they have in Siem Reap. And I thought that these shots were brilliant, right? Because you just look at them on the back of the camera, right? And this is
Yeah.
pre-EVF.
Yep.
So there's no looking through the EVF and really knowing for sure that this is sharp and those highlights aren't blown out, right?
Yep.
So I thought I had a memory card full of absolute bangers because they look great on the back of the camera. And I got them home after that trip. Oh, they were crap. They were blurry. The highlights were blown out. There was camera shake. It was just like, oh man, I spent all this money on this camera and all this money on this trip, and I had the trip of a lifetime, and I thought I'd got these killer shots,
Mm.
and I just hadn't. And it was just like, okay, am I going to quit this and sell this gear, or am I going to figure this out and just, figure out what am I doing wrong? How do I just perfect all of these things, So I dove into it like everybody does, and I got obsessed. And you learned about Photoshop, learned about processing,
Sure,
and then
sure.
learned all the techniques in the field that you need to get sharp images, and learned about bracketing and proper metering and all that kind of stuff. And it just kind of snowballed after that, and I just got obsessed with it. And then when you see that first high quality print, right? When you know that you've nailed a shot and you've
Yep.
got all your technique right, you've got good composition, you've got good light, you did everything right, and then you send it off to your first print lab and it comes back and you're like, wow, I've done it. It's like playing a video game where you've gone on to the next level and you've just defeated a boss and you've nailed it, right? I felt like I'd got to a starting point of the next level, which is kind of what I had done. It was like
Sure.
just before I decided to turn pro, and I think I needed that. I think I needed that proof on paper to have a large print of one of my images to prove to myself, okay, this is as good as any other print that I've ever seen in a gallery, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I could do this. Now that was also sort of a. I think I'm doing a pretty good job of being motivational, wouldn't you say? Yeah, I
Yeah.
think.
I'm motivated.
Are you pumped? Are you pumped, Brad?
I guess you've raised a couple of things that are themes that I talk about a bit on the podcast with a number of guests. One is particularly for people that are early in their journeys, everyone has to start somewhere. Nobody comes out of the womb with a camera in their hand knowing how, the exposure triangle and how to compose and all the rest of that. So these are all skills that you have to learn, and you've got to actually get yourself into a position where your confidence and your skills rise together, and you get to a point where you go, the point you mentioned where you go, hey, I'm actually reasonably good at this. I know enough now to know whether or not I've done a good or a bad job. And I think that theme for me is something that particularly people early in their journey need to understand and need to stop comparing themselves to other people that they see out there on social media and compare themselves to themselves. And it's that self-reflection, I think, makes a really big difference to how people, see their work. What's your
Yeah,
thought on that?
my thoughts on that are, that saying comparison is the thief of
Yep.
joy, right? At the same time, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. So
Sure.
comparison is also absolutely vital if you want to get better. So
Yep.
no matter what your field of expertise, if you don't have somebody who you'd like to sort of get to that stage that they're at, some sort of role model where it's like that's the standard I want to be at. If you're not striving for that, if you just
Use
kind of
that for inspiration as opposed to, oh, I wish I mean, yeah, there's shots that I look at and I go, I wish I'd taken it. But it
I
is about that inspiration, though, isn't it?
see, I guess it depends on the type of person you are, right? So I'm Generation X, right? So I was raised with negative reinforcement. There was no such thing as positive reinforcement when I was a kid, right?
Yep.
So it was just all harshness. So I guess I've grown up appreciating the truth and the harsh reality of negative reinforcement, right? So,
Yeah.
I think if I'd have been born in a different generation where people sort of are a little bit softer and not quite as harsh, maybe I wouldn't have tried quite so hard, right? So what I admire in people is where they know where they're at. And this
Yep.
is not just landscape photography, this is anything in life. I
Sure.
feel like you have to be true to yourself and understand where you're at. And don't delude yourself, right? Because if you delude yourself thinking that you're great and you're up here, when you're actually down here, you
Yeah.
will fail terribly and it will be humiliating. Whereas if you're fully in touch with reality and you know, well, I'm just down here, but you see these other people that are up here, well, how did they get there? And you start to analyze, well, what are the steps that I have to take to get between this point and that point? So, like, I don't mean like beat yourself up, but
Yeah. Yeah.
understand where you are with things. For example, like I will never be a professional basketball player. I do not have the physical attributes. I'm too old and I'm too short and fat, right? This is the reality of my situation.
Sure.
But if someone was pissing in my ear telling me, you can do anything you want, Gavin, you can be anything you want. No, you can't, right? Let's give you a little dose of reality.
Mm.
But if you are in touch with what your limitations are, you'll also be in touch with what your potential is, right? You'll know, well,
Absolutely.
maybe I can get to there, right? So I think people don't beat yourself up, but at the same time, strive to be better, strive to get to that point. And I think if you're not deluding yourself and you're fully in touch with where you're at, all you got to do is figure out, well, what are the steps? How do I
Yeah.
get from where I am to where
What
you are?
what are the 10,000 hours I've got to put in to get to that level of expertise,
Well, think about this. Like if you hire a plumber, there's a big difference between an apprentice and a
Absolutely.
master who's been doing it 30 years, right? And so at one point in time, the master was an apprentice, okay?
Exactly.
So I think, as I said, I come from that generation and I think it did me good, right? The harsh realities of what you can and can't do. So I mean that's my best advice to beginners is yeah, just you know, put your stuff online, and when your Auntie Mabel says that's the best picture I've ever seen, be like, oh, thanks, Auntie. I'm glad you think that, but I think we both know it's probably not, right? It
Yeah.
might be, but the chances are it's probably not. So don't just take that compliment and go to the bank and say I'm the tops. Do the work, put the years in, and then if you do all that, there really is no reason why you can't be like top class. That's what I
Absolutely.
keep working for. One day I will be.
I'm the same. Yeah. Do you ever look back on your career and think, would I have done something differently or could I have done something differently to change the outcome?
I'm sure I could have done things differently. I don't know what I would have done differently. I think I probably would have started the YouTube channel a lot earlier.
I
I think
think
I,
I think
I was
that's
very
that's true with a lot of things for people is when you get to a certain point in your career, you go, "Oh, I wish I'd started this earlier because I
yeah.
would have had extra time to do what I want to do."
Well, I think I was just a bit late to the game with the YouTube gig. I was a bit of a late comer to it, so I'm still playing catch up, I think. So I wish I'd done that sooner, and I did think about doing it many years before I did, and I just didn't want to. I just thought I don't want to be on cam. I don't want to look at myself and listen to myself on video. Like, most people, if they film themselves, their initial reaction when they watch it is, "Oh my God, listen to my voice, look at me."
Oh, it
It's
sounds awful. Yeah.
it takes a while to get over that, and I even in my first year or two, I would still have that feeling of and it's difficult to watch. And now I just do I don't care. I just do not care. Like again, it's like what I said earlier. I've come to terms with what I am. Right, I'm
Yeah.
not a 6'5" Adonis with abs. You know, I'm kind of chubby and I'm short, and sometimes I'll I'll catch myself on video at a very wrong angle, and I'll be like, "Oh, geez, nobody's going to see that clip. No one needs to see that." Or you're bending over and you can see your ass crack or whatever. Like I'm quite selective with what you guys end up getting to see, I think by and large, for the most part, I've come to terms with what I am, and I'm happy with it overall.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting what you said there, and it really resonates. I started this podcast a bit over 3 years ago, and to be honest, I've never listened back to any of the episodes since they were released. I listen to them through the edit, and I don't listen to everything because I don't need to. I need to sort of highlight a few things that I want to. Okay, I've got to chop that out because we had to take a break, or somebody had to, go and put the cat out or whatever. But it listening back to myself, I can't do it. I honestly cannot do it. It just
Yeah.
I hear myself and I go, no, I don't want to listen to that.
No, but you know what's weird, Grant, is nobody else does. Like
No, I
I
know.
don't.
Everyone else hears you, and well, that's your voice, and that's you, and
Yeah.
they're okay with it. Yeah.
Yeah, but when it comes to ourselves, we have this ideal in our minds of
Mm.
what we are, and when the reality doesn't match that, it's like, oh no, don't don't present me with that. You run away from it. But
Absolutely.
that's just the human condition, right?
I think one of the things that I've spoken to a few people about in the podcast is the way that they use both visual communication, but also other forms of communication in their art. How do you sort of, you obviously you've got the YouTube channel, and a big part of what you do is that video and the persona and the jokes and and I know because there's obvious outtakes. Some of them are scripted, some of them are less scripted. There's a bit of ad hoc in there, but there's also some scripted stuff. How do you sort of, I guess, work your way around that path of trying to communicate what it is that you're trying to communicate? Because when you're putting out a video, you've got a bit of an idea, I assume, before you start, what it is that you're going to talk about
That's
or
quite the
not.
assumption there. That's quite the
I know it's a
assumption,
big
Grant.
assumption, but
No, most of the time I have no idea. So sometimes I've got an objective, right? So it could be as simple as like the video I put out today, which was really it was a video about going out into winter and enjoying nature and taking pictures of a beautiful frozen waterfall. But if you believed what the title said and the thumbnail, you'd believe that it's just about this new piece of equipment that I've got, this tripod head that I've been playing with for the last couple of weeks. So, I might go out there and think, okay, what can I talk about today? Oh, I've got this new tripod head. I'll talk about that, right? But really, really, it's not. I don't usually have an objective. Usually, I'm just going out because I want to get a shot, right? I
yeah,
just want to go and take some pictures because that's what I love doing, and I'll just take you along for the ride. There are times though when I'll do that and I just set off, and then maybe an idea might come to me while I'm out there. I might be like, I might get to the scene and go, okay, this scene calls for some exposure blending. So I'll talk about that, right? Or
yeah,
this scene
sure.
calls for a pano. So that might be what the video ends up being about. But I often don't know until afterwards, till I've just gone on the adventure, what that video is actually going to be about. So, I mean, you're talking about how do I communicate my ideas. I don't think in that way. I just go out and I do what I'm compelled to do,
Yeah,
and then afterwards, I figure out a narrative. Afterwards, I figure out what's my story here. What am I gonna try and do with this video? But whatever it is, the goal is always the same. It's always like inspire people, right? So you want to make them feel like, oh yeah, I want to go out and take pictures like this. This is what I want to do, right? So it's that inspirational factor. And then it's that slightly educational factor, right? I want to give you a few pointers that help you with your journey.
mhm,
And then it's the entertainment factor. So it's always those three things. Like I want to make you laugh, brighten up your day. And so as long as those three things end up in there, which again, I don't consciously think about that. It's just how it is, right? As long as those three things end up in there, then I feel like I've done what I intended to do. There are times when it's slightly different, where I'm really focused on education because there's a topic that people have been asking me about, and it's okay,
yeah,
I'm going to really address that. And it's funny because whenever you change the format of the video, certain people watch my videos because they want to be entertained, And then some people watch my videos because they're really into photography, and the entertainment factor is secondary, right? So what'll happen then is the video might do quite well over time if it's a technical video, because the photographers that really want to learn, they'll love that and they might watch it twice, right? So the video will do pretty good. But I'll get lots of complaints from the people who watch it for entertainment, right? They'll
Wasn't
be like,
funny.
"Oh man, this is so boring." Like I've got my friends who are not even into photography, who I
Yeah.
might only hear from twice a year. My buddy Mark, I haven't seen him in years, but I'll still get the odd text message. Man, that video about exposure bracketing was boring as shit. Don't do any more of those. But he's not even a photographer, right? He has no interest in the technical stuff. But so I know that there are people that watch for different reasons. And at the end of the day, I just do it for my reasons. I try and keep myself happy and fulfilled
Mm.
and satisfied artistically. And every now and then I do get satisfaction from teaching to some degree. So I just do what I want to do, and people seem to like it. So I'll keep doing it as long as people keep watching it. But then when they start to tune out, I'll do something else.
Yeah, fair enough. What about the feedback that you do get? I mean, how much are you sort of trying to craft, as you said, a lot of people might ask you about, hey, I want to know more about exposure bracketing, or whatever it is, How much do you sort of listen to that feedback and go, okay, well, now I'm going to focus and do something like that? Is it something that you do regularly? Is it just something that you kind of hit upon when you've had enough of reading all the feedback and going, okay, I really need to do something about this
A
to
bit
get
of
them off my
both,
back?
really. It's a bit of both because, first of all, you have to have the opportunity to, if people are talking about a particular topic and you start to get a lot of questions and comments about this one particular topic around about the same time, and
Yeah,
then you have an opportunity while you're out in the field to demonstrate that, then that works. But sometimes I don't want to force it, right? Sometimes you go out and you might think, okay, a lot of people have been requesting this, so I'll do that, I'll cover that. But
yeah,
then you get there and there's just nothing that works for that particular topic. People might be talking about long exposures where you've got to there's you couldn't tell the difference between a long exposure and a fast one. There is no difference. So the opportunities have to match the requests, and then I'll do it. But I have to have an interest in it. I'm not going to just for views. I'm not going to go and learn about a topic that I've zero interest in to then demonstrate and teach, because then it's almost a bit artificial, right?
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not really doing what I love. So I'm always trying to find that balance between me doing what I love and giving the audience what they want. And as long as I can, manage that balance,
Mm.
I think there's harmony and there's cohesion and it works. But that's why I don't do specific gear videos. I know my video today had quite a bit of talk about gear,
Sure.
but like I have no interest in talking about the latest point and shoot camera that just came out, right?
Yeah.
Now,
There's
there
plenty of
is
channels that will do that. So if someone wants
there
to do
is.
a camera review, go and look at one of those channels that do camera review.
But I do. I mean, I do like gear, and I would even enjoy doing gear reviews. But I could only do gear that I'm fascinated by.
Yeah.
Really, if you're a proper gear channel, you're also showing people the crap stuff, and you might even say this is a pile of crap, right?
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
not going to get much enjoyment out of that. That's why usually when I talk about gear, it's usually only gear that I'm really impressed with and
Mm.
that I'm excited about because I enjoy using it. So enjoying talking about it. But that's why I don't really do gear videos. And what's funny is whenever on the rare occasions when I do, they do really well. They
Yeah.
they always do really well. But people always say, "Oh, don't do gear. We hate gear videos." Well, why'd you watch them
Yeah.
then?
Why
Because
do you
every time
want
I do,
everybody watching them? Yeah, that's
yeah,
it.
everybody watches gear. So, if I was just in this to build an audience and sell stuff and get sponsorships and all that kind of stuff, I'd probably just do gear,
Yeah.
But I do what I do because I love it.
Yeah. Well, I think you've got plenty of things like that. Frono's photos and all those sorts of guys. The guys that are actually right into you know covering the gamut of all of the producers, and as you say, there's stuff that you're going to have to deal with, which is absolute rubbish. And
Yeah.
the number of gear producers or whatever that hit me up, and I'm sure you're much the same. And I've spoken to a few other people. They get hit up all the time. Hey, use my filter or use my whatever it is. I know. I got to say, I do love your little hot shoe umbrella. That looks like a fantastic waste of time and money.
Honestly, that thing saved my camera in Iceland.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, as crappy as it looks, it saved my camera because it got wet, really wet, even with that thing on, right? But if I'd have not had that thing on, it would have been drenched. I don't even think I tried to sell that. I don't even think I didn't even put an affiliate link on that. It was just like,
Uh,
here's a piece of crap I bought. And it works. It does the job. But what I don't like is carrying it around, you know.
yeah, sure, sure. But I guess more the question is how do you deal with all of the people that come to you and want you to review their gear or look at their gear or use their gear and get it shown, and 99.99 repeater percent of them want that done for nothing as well, and they want 10 or 15 minutes dedicated to their product. How do you respond when somebody comes to you with like that?
I just don't. I just hit junk. This is junk. And it
Yeah,
goes straight to my junk folder. The only things I will ever entertain is like stuff that I think I might use, you
yeah,
know?
sure.
So
Sure.
if it's of no interest to me, then I don't think it's going to be of any interest to my audience, right?
Yeah,
So I would say only 2% of the emails that I get are anything I would even consider using, right? And then you look at it, most of the time it looks like crap, right? It looks like, oh, there's not a chance in hell that I'm ever like, I'm not going to do a bad review because if somebody sends me something and I think it's absolute crap, I'll just
yeah.
tell them. Say, look,
Yeah.
I don't want your money because I'm just going to tell people that this is crap. Do
Or
you
I have
really
no
want to?
use for it, and in which case I'm never going to use it. So why would I put it on my
Yeah,
channel?
but why would they want to pay me to tell people this is rubbish? They
Yeah,
wouldn't. So that's why whenever you see gear, I'm honest about it. And it's funny because people say, well, how can we be sure that you're being honest about this? Well, the fact that it's even showed up in the video means that I've already vetted it and I've deemed it worthwhile. Or if it's something crap like that umbrella, I'll just tell you straight up in the video, look, I paid $15 for this piece of crap. It's rubbish. It's total shit. Don't buy one. But it did save my camera, right? And it is what it is. But anytime I'm like showing people, an expensive camera or a beautiful new lens, the only reason it's in the video is because I've used it and I've got brilliant results with it, and it's something that I would like to have, and I'm happy to recommend it. There's no way I'm going to recommend something that's shit. Although I did once do that and I regretted it badly. And it
yeah,
was, but at the time that I recommended it, I believed in the product. So I did this video on tripods years ago, and I just paid $600 for this Benro tripod. I thought it
yeah,
was brilliant. I thought it was a bargain. And to start off with, it was great. It worked great. Then I took it on one international trip for like 2 or 3 weeks. The thing fell apart. And it fell apart after I'd already posted my video talking about how good this Benro tripod was. And I contacted Benro and they'd sent me some part replacements and I tried to put it back together and it just ended up in the trash. And I was okay, I'm never going to do that again unless I've really put something through its paces.
yeah.
So that's the only one time that I can remember of recommending a product that I did believe in, but turned out I was wrong and it was a pile of crap.
You've got to be enjoying the Hasselblad though.
Oh yeah, where is it? Here
Funny
it
that you
is.
had it right there.
It is. Oh God. I just love this camera. It is a delicious piece of gear. Yes, it's ostentatious, and people have attacked me for, oh, we can't identify you with you anymore because our cameras are only $4,000, not $20,000. And it's like, look,
You're a
if I was
sellout.
a plumber and I had $150,000 truck filled with $80,000 worth of tools, Would you have any quibbles about the amount of money I've spent on my tools? No, they wouldn't care.
Yeah.
But because I'm a photographer on YouTube and because, slowly, built up the quality of my equipment from, the basic stuff to now finally, and a nice high-end camera. I'm not going to deny it is an ostentatious camera. You know, people resent that, which is I find weird. But then you get,
Yeah, I don't understand that attitude at all. It makes absolutely no sense. I mean, if someone can afford the best, whether it's a Phase One or a Red or a Hasselblad or a Leica, some of the Leicas that are kicking around are stupidly priced as well. Good on them. Who
yeah.
cares? As you say, it's like the plumber's truck and his gear. The tool you use is the tool you use. If you can
Oh yeah.
afford it, I always say to somebody that, you know, does one of my workshops or whatever, buy the best camera you can afford.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
that's the best advice you can give someone.
I think we've reached a point now with technology where there really is no difference, quite
No,
honestly, between like this is a Sony camera that will produce, well, maybe not this one, but my other Sony will produce images as good as this Hasselblad camera, right? The difference is the operation, the user experience, it's
yeah,
how it feels
yeah,
and how you interact with the device. So instead of it being slightly annoying like the Sony is, it's just pleasurable to use, right? So it's a delight to use. Kind of like, look, a vehicle, a car, they all do the same job. They all get you from A to B. You will get the same result no matter which car you drive, right?
yeah.
But if you drive a Toyota Yaris, it's not going to be as pleasurable as driving a Bugatti Veyron, let's be honest.
No, that's very true. Very true. I want to talk to you a bit about how you chose to become full-time professional and get what drove that decision and how hard was that decision and what were you thinking when you actually said, okay, I'm going to
What was I thinking, Grant?
pull the ripcord, jump out of
Yeah,
the plane, and I'm on my own now.
what was I thinking? Yeah, I must have
I
been
feel
thinking.
I feel you.
I must have been thinking, do you know, I'd like to be broke and struggle from month to month. That's what I'd like to do. Yeah, not the most sensible or lucrative decision I ever made.
Mm.
So here's the thing with artists, right? Artists live to create, and that's how they achieve happiness. So whether you're a destitute artist who lives from meal to meal, which I have been that guy, or
Yeah,
whether you're flying high and you've got yachts and mansions, I'm not that guy yet. And I might never be that guy. When you look at it, if you're a true artist, either way, you're gonna be fulfilled, whether you're in rags or riches, right? Because that's not really what you get motivated. What you're motivated by, what you're enriched by, is the process of creating something. It's creation, right? And I think for me, I guess I'm almost going to contradict myself now because nowadays I spend more time sitting in this chair than I do out in the field. But I'm still creating every video that I edit. When I'm putting together a story, I'm still creating a piece of art. Whether you think it's highbrow art or whether you think it's just ridiculous comedy, it's still art, right?
that's it.
And so I get a lot of fulfillment out of that process of going out in the field, being out in nature, taking pictures, sometimes really good shots, sometimes failures, right? But then telling a story about it afterwards, putting it all together and feeding you this vicarious adventure. The whole process from beginning to end is extremely creative and fulfilling for me. So really, that's my dream job. And here's the thing: let's say I won the lottery tomorrow, and I had $40 million in the bank. My life wouldn't really change. I'd
Yeah.
still have a messy office, right? I'd still do the same thing. I'd still be hiking up mountains. Maybe I'd be using helicopters a bit more often, right? And I might have a Sherpa to carry my gear for me.
Yeah, you
But
could afford an assistant.
yeah, I could afford a few actually, but ultimately, I'd still be doing the same thing. And even I get emails from companies that we'll do your video editing for you. We'll edit your videos. No, you won't, because I want them doing my way. I
Yeah,
want to edit it. Like all of those awkward pauses and really painful, cringy moments that I create because I see it that way and I want that timing to be exact. I want that cut to be there. So
yeah.
for me to hand over that work to someone else, yes, it would be quicker and I might even make more money
I
doing
don't
it.
know that it would be quicker though, because you then have to be really specific about what it is. So the time that you would spend
Yeah,
telling them what you want, you could spend
exactly.
doing it yourself.
And that's why I do it myself because I know if I handed it off, they might do some really slick animations and stuff
Oh
like
yeah,
that,
yeah,
but they wouldn't get the nuance of the moment. Like they just wouldn't edit it the way I wanted it to be edited. And so for me to then explain, no, change this, I could just do it quicker myself, right?
yeah. And the thing is,
So
you probably also got Tony, the work experience kid, doing half of the editing anyway,
yeah,
as
exactly, yeah.
opposed to the guy that sits at the top of the organization that
Oh yeah.
really knows everything.
So for me, like when I decided to sort of, you know, go full time with this, it was a bit scary, but it's like, okay, I just want to do the thing that, that classic cliche of if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I mean, there's lots of things that annoy me about what I do, the admin sort of thing, but anyone who's self-employed cannot escape that. So, but on the whole, for the most part, I really enjoy what I do, and it's so much better to be doing something like that, even if you're making a bit less money or a lot less money than if you, let's say you had a career as a dentist or whatever, and you're making
Sure.
money hand over fist. Perhaps being a professional photographer is not a good career move, especially if you've got, dependents, you've got kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. For me, if I'm not creating something, if I'm not making something all of the time, I think I'd go out of my mind, Grant.
Yeah. Yeah. And you struck a really good point there about doing something that you love. You wouldn't do it if you didn't love it.
No, do you know what I'd be doing? If I just wanted to make money and be a famous YouTuber, I'd do a cooking channel. That's what I'd
Okay.
do.
You wouldn't go
And
Joe Rogan and go right wing.
I've thought about it. I've thought about doing a cooking channel, and I
Okay.
and I think it would fly. It would take off, and I
I
would
think it
make
would
it
too.
hilarious. It would just be outrageous comedy, but with the goal of actually making a pretty good meal at the end of it.
Uh,
And I'd enjoy it, but I don't think I would enjoy it as much as what I do now, right? I don't know. Maybe I would, but I like to get out as much as I can. And then what I love is reliving it.
yeah.
So, like recently, I've been doing those Iceland videos, and for when Amanda and I went in last summer, and I've still got loads more videos from that trip, right? You forget, because it's so long ago, you forget how good it was. You forget those moments.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when I'm editing the videos and putting it all together, you relive it and you're like, oh, wasn't that good? And remember
Mm,
that hike? And oh, wasn't that a beautiful viewpoint? And remember that pizza? That pizza was great. You relive it. And I,
yeah.
I'll relive it for like 3 or 4 days while I'm editing the video. And Amanda loves it too, because she'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. That was great. Yeah. Maybe that was a good trip after all.
No, I know exactly that feeling. I I do a yearly photo book, and it's a mix of some of the art stuff, but largely, and that's partly because my wife forces me to do it, but it's partly snapshots and just stuff
Yeah.
we've been doing and the experiences. And as you say, you've forgotten about that little moment that happened, and you come back to it in the putting together of this book. Oh yeah, that's what we did there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. I mean, when you think of it like that, I've got the best job in the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. You've shot all over the world. Still to come. What's still on your bucket list in terms of locations? Is there somewhere that you just haven't been that you really want to scratch the itch?
Yeah. I don't want to tell you about it because then
Oh,
people
okay. Yeah, well, keep it to yourself then. Don't
I've
tell
got
us.
yeah, I've got a list. It grows all the time. But I don't want to tell you because then people go there, like The spots that I want to go to, I like them because not many people have got those shots. Maybe
Yeah,
just a couple of if you Google these places, they've got like two or three shots, and maybe only one of them's pretty good. So it's like I want to tell you, but I'm not telling you.
fair enough.
I'm gonna
Fair
keep
enough.
that one quiet. But if you
What
want to
about?
tell me of some places, I'm totally receptive.
Well, I can tell you loads of places here around Sydney and east coast of Australia. I went out to Broken Hill, which is about and we drove. We've got a motorhome. We broke it up into a couple of days because it's a 12-hour straight drive if you don't
Yeah.
stop for toilet breaks or anything else, which is kind of impossible. And it's desert and it's really different to what I'm used to. And I'd certainly recommend it to anyone who wants to get out into, those sorts of landscapes that are really unusual. You have different ecosystems over each hill as you're driving there. And one of the things that really struck me was how many different types of landscape and vegetation and everything you saw, because someone that says desert, everybody thinks, oh yeah, rolling sandhills, sand dunes. That's all that's there, and it's absolutely not that. Different soil types and different vegetation, and each hill you go over, you're seeing a very different landscape, and you also have dry salt lakes and all those sorts of things. For me, it was just an absolute playground for photography and somewhere that I'd really recommend anyone that comes to Australia to get out to if they can.
Yeah, I'd love to come back. I've only been that one time. I'd love to come back, but I don't think I can handle that unless I can pay for first class, which I can't afford. I just can't do cattle class for 24 hours.
Yeah.
I've done it once. It was an ordeal.
Well, when you're on in BC, you probably would have been a lot closer than you are now.
I don't know. When I did it before, it was from the UK.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a good 24-hour trip, but I think we did Canada 2019 just before COVID. Actually, did winter there. My daughter was working in Banff,
Oh
and
yeah.
so yeah, we flew over to Calgary and then went up to Banff and spent Christmas with her. Doing Lake Louise, all the usual stuff up there, Lake
Yeah,
Louise,
yeah.
and, Vermilion Lakes and all those sort of things. But
Oh yeah.
that
And that's
was
the most beautiful time of year to do that. Like
oh,
if you're there
absolutely.
for Christmas, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, it was an incredible trip. But I mean, for me, that trip was a fair hike. What do we do? We flew direct to Vancouver and then to Calgary, so it was about 16 hours. So it wasn't too bad.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah. It was a hike, but it was bearable. Going to
Yeah.
the UK and Europe, that's a real effort. And
So how long does it take you to get to the UK? 24 hours.
yeah, it's about 24. I mean, 22 hours flying time. So it's about, you've usually got a 3 hour stopover, or in some cases, it could be as much as 5 or 6 hours, depending on who you fly with and which way you go, whether you go. I mean, we've done it a few different ways. You can go through Thailand, you can go through Hong Kong, you can go through Singapore, you can go direct to Dubai, for example, on Emirates, and or what's the other one? Abu Dhabi there in Etihad. That's
Yeah.
actually not too bad. But funnily enough, going that way, I feel less wasted when I get there. And that for me, that's a big thing about travel, overseas travel anyway, is you've really got to think about, okay, how long do I really want to sit in this seat?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like if you can afford that first class, it's not a problem,
Yeah, well,
is
it,
it?
it does make a difference if you can get up there, but
I've
I've been
never I've never flown first class. I once splashed for business class once. And it was so bad I said I'll never do that again. It was
really.
Lufthansa and
Oh yeah,
it was cost me a fortune. But
yeah.
I thought it'd be fabulous and it it was so bad. I think there was an extra inch on the chair or something like
Oh
that.
wow.
It
So
was
you
just
didn't
and it
even
got
get
like
lie flat seats or anything like that?
no, you didn't get any of that. I thought
Wow.
that's what it would be, and it was just like, oh, this is why did I do this? And I've never done it since. That was like 20 years ago. I haven't done it since. So maybe it's different now. I don't want to harp on. Lufthansa, but I'm dubious about splashing on flights now because of that one bad experience.
I was lucky enough to work for an airline and did first class a few times. Did it over to LA actually once for it was a work trip, and of course being an employee, even though they put you into first class, they put you into the broken seat
Oh, great.
line.
Oh, great. A rip-off. What airline was that?
That was the one I worked for, Qantas. Yeah. But it was. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed working with them. It was a good time, and got to see some amazing places, and occasionally got to sit up the front of the plane as well, which is it's very nice when the seat works and when you get the full service because you can actually push the call button and they'll come and give you a steak sandwich at any time in the flight, if apart from landing and takeoff. So
Re-
the button, pretty much whatever you want. It was pretty good when you get there, but being an employee, there were two caveats. One is it's all standby. So if there's no room, you don't get on at all. If
Yeah.
there's no room up the front, then you move back down the cabins, and so you could end up doing, a long trip in economy if there's nothing
My
up.
my philosophy with flights now is it's the total length of the trip that matters the most to me.
Yeah, yeah,
So if I can't fly direct to certain places, I'd rather just never go. Because yes, you can save a fortune by hopping here and there, and you got like three stops in two different countries, and it's just like I'm not doing it. I'm not doing a 36-hour journey just to go somewhere that would really only take me 10 hours. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Because you got all these layovers. I'm just, and I don't care if it saves me $1,000. I am just not doing that now. And it's got to the point where I'll just stay home then. If I can't get the connections that I want, I'll just stay home because the older I get, the less worth the hassle it is. All the stress and the
I
hassle and the
know exactly
rushing.
what you mean.
I'm just not willing to put up with it, which because I've done it in my youth. I've done all that. And now, as a cantankerous old fart, I don't have it in me anymore to put up with all that bollocks. Arriving in airports at like 4 a.m. and everything's closed. You can't even get a coffee and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And it's like you've got 8 hours to kill. What are you gonna do when you're exhausted? You haven't slept. So for me, it's like okay, what I really do need that lottery win so that I can start paying for first class.
Let's hope it happens. Have you bought a ticket? That's the first thing.
No, that I haven't. Not in years.
Dear. If someone's struggling to find inspiration, what advice would you give them to reconnect with their creative spark?
I'm glad you asked that, Grant. What you want to do is reach for a copy of Stories Within Stories by
I was
Gavin
wondering when that
Hardcastle.
was coming out.
There's a link in the description. I don't know if there's a link, but
Well, I can make a link in the description if you want.
yeah, I mean, that's what you want to do is you want to read my book. That's just all the inspiration you need because not only is the book full of beautiful images like this one, it's got stories. That's why I called it Stories Within Stories. I did these beautiful anecdotes, these write-ups that just explain what went on that day and how that adventure unfolded. And then I put little tech notes in there as well, so that if people want to know how the shot was made, they can learn some stuff as well. That's what you do for inspiration. But if you don't have the dollars to buy my admittedly quite expensive book, obviously, you just go to YouTube and type in Photo Tripper with an F, and you will be inspired.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
But I mean, other than that, you just got to go out, right? You just got to get out there and you just got to do it. And if you're not like, if you don't enjoy the experience of being out there, then maybe landscape photography is not for you, which is pointless for me to say that because all of your listeners probably love this, right? That's why they're listening.
I hope
But
so.
I do. But yeah, I mean, just get out there, get out and get your camera out. I know quite a lot of my workshop students, they kind of do what I do in that they they work hard, they've got their careers, and then
Yeah.
they might go on one or two photography workshops a year,
Mm.
and that's the only photography that they get to do, right? But I always try to encourage them. Look, if you can, just go out once a week. Whether it's, if you don't work weekends, go out one of those days there. Try and go out as much as you can so that when you do go on these photography trips, you've really got your skills dialed in, not just with the usage of the camera, but like your compositions and your recognition of light, forms, and contrast and colors and all that kind of stuff. Do more. That the more that you do, the more you want to do. It just feeds itself, and you'll get more inspired simply by doing the thing that inspires you, and on it goes. And when you do take those trips, whether it's a workshop or whether you're just doing your own photography trip, it's a huge difference because you can tell the people that show up who shoot regularly,
Yeah.
they're not struggling with their camera, they're not struggling with their equipment. They've got everything dialed in and they're just looking. They're just looking for the composition, and then they get the shot. For people who don't get the chance or the opportunity to shoot in between those trips, there's always a day or two of frustration where they're just kind of getting back into the swing of things. It's almost like a sport, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like if you hadn't played football in a while, it might take you a day or two before you get into it, and there'll be some sore muscles there. It's kind of like that mentally with your photography. So yeah, just force yourself to get out there, even if it's cold and even if it's a little bit miserable. Just get out there and shoot. You will get better at what you do, and like I say, it's almost like a feedback loop. You'll be more inspired to go out again because you realize, I wasn't that bad, was it? I got up
Oh,
at 4 o'clock. I thought it was going to be awful, but it wasn't that bad. And that'll inspire you to do more.
yeah, that's fantastic. Very, very inspiring. Well done. What's the best and or worst piece of advice anyone's ever given you?
Well, does it have to be photography related?
No, it doesn't.
It's a classic, really, is you can't polish a turd or
I've
you
I've
can't
tried a
shine
few
a
times.
turd. Yeah, we've all tried, haven't we? In fact, I have polished a few turds and they turned out to be all right. But yeah, my old college lecturer,
Yeah,
he taught me that you can't polish a turd because I went to college to learn how to make guitars, and I would take in these pieces of crap guitars to try and do them up to sell them, right? To fix them up and make them better. But
sure.
they were always shit guitars, right? Wasn't like I brought in a good guitar that just needed some tweaks. It was always a piece of shit that just wasn't worth fixing up. And he said, Gavin, you cannot you're turd polishing again, aren't you? You're turd polishing. This is Ted, my old college lecturer, one of the funniest human beings I have ever met. He would be fired in an instant today for his not politically correct comments, right? He was not
Yep.
very PC. And that's why we loved him, because he was hilarious. We loved him. All of the guys in my class in college, we just worshipped Ted because he was just hilarious. So yeah, I mean, I know it sounds pretty basic, but yeah, you can't polish a turd, and most of the time you shouldn't bother. You should just, I think that's the thing with photography. I think this is why it applies. Is what I'll see people doing is they'll go somewhere, they'll take a shot, and the light just isn't very good, and it's you need to accept it's perhaps a wasted trip, but they'll because they're there and they want something out of this, they'll get their image in Photoshop and they'll process the shit out of it, right? They'll just
Yep.
completely overcook it to try and turn it into what they hoped it would be if they'd had good light.
Yeah.
Well, you're turd polishing, right? You're just going to end up with an overcooked image. Whereas what you should do is just accept the loss and go back however many times is required. Because I can guarantee you, when you do get that good light and the shot takes itself, it hardly needs any post processing. It doesn't need finessing. You are not going to be polishing a turd because you've already got a piece of gold already on your camera. And
Yeah.
and that's my top advice to people is if it's not working, if you're not getting the shot, just keep going back. You will get it, but don't waste your time polishing that turd.
Fantastic advice. We're going to have to wrap up shortly, but I've got a couple more questions. Are there any photographers that you think I should be talking to on the podcast?
Oh God, I knew you were going to ask that question. And I'm really not in touch with the scene. I don't know what's going on in the photography scene.
Neither do I. I just talk to people.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I might recommend a photographer because I like their work, but they might be the most boring person you've ever spoken to. So I don't
That's
know.
okay.
But
I'm pretty boring, I reckon.
well, I reckon all the guys that I know personally, you've probably already spoken to them. I did notice, Grant, that I was way down on your list. Like, you said you were trying to talk to all the best people, and I was like, you've been doing a few before me. Like, what's all that
I'm
about?
trying to space them out a little bit because I don't want to peak too early.
Or you could have said, well, what it is, Gavin, is I just wanted to warm up my interviewing skills before we met, right? So that I
There's
would be
that
my
too.
best.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll accept that. Well, you've done Grumpton,
Yep.
you've done Shane Bloom.
Yep.
Have you done Tom?
No, I haven't done Tom. I did ask him a few months ago, and he said he was too busy to do it at the moment. But I'll hit him up again.
You know who you should do, but you should only do it on one condition, and the condition should be that he's his true self, and that is Bry Barnum. You know, Grumpton's best friend. I was sometimes in Grumpton's video. Brian, that guy is hilarious, right? Which you wouldn't know because of his videos. He's quite reserved in his
Yeah,
videos,
it
right?
seems quite measured and quite
Yeah,
quiet.
well, that's not what he's like in real life. In real life, he's outrageous. And if he's had a beer or two, he is hilarious. Like, if you think I'm funny, he's outrageous. He will get some laughs, but only if he's his true self, right? His true self. If he's holding back and being, you know, the professional persona, he's well, that's not who he is as far as I'm concerned. Brian is hilarious if you give him a chance to shine. So
Fair
I,
enough.
I would get in touch with Brian, but say Gavin said you have to play yourself. You have to be yourself because apparently you're quite comical. He'll have you in stitches if his true self shows up.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you for them. I'll definitely give Brian a go. See what I can get out of him.
Yeah.
My last question is one that I've been trying to get to the bottom of since the beginning of the podcast with many photographers. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay, good.
I do. I will eat a Hawaiian pizza, or is that racist? Are we not allowed to say that now?
I
That
don't
might be.
know. I don't care. They call them Hawaiians here. We have an Aussie pizza over here, which is similar to the Hawaiian, with some people in Queensland have with pineapple, others don't. But the big difference is an egg cracked onto the top of the pizza before it
Oh
goes in the oven. So it
no,
bakes and bubbles around.
no, absolutely not. I'm not having that. That's
That's called an
wrong.
Aussie.
I thought it would be like kangaroo meat or something.
No, 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 no. Hardly anyone eats kangaroo. But I mean, you can get it, but and to be honest, it's actually quite a delicious animal. But yeah, I'm
I've had
not.
it.
Yeah,
I've had kangaroo and I've had crocodile too.
there's the odd place that will do a crocodile pizza or a kangaroo pizza or even emu, I think. And but they're kind of like you ultra gourmet pizza places.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'll definitely eat a pizza with pineapple. Does that make me weird then if I eat a pizza with pineapple on it?
No,
Am I
definitely
weird?
not. I think I haven't done the numbers since I'm sort of going to try and do a count up for when we get to episode 200, maybe if I can remember and pull my finger out of my backside long enough to actually do it.
But
Um,
I've just wondered
I
if
think we're
this was
about
some sort
half
of
and half, roughly.
right. So it's not some sort of like social profiling that says if you like that on a pizza, you're a psychopath.
No, it's not like
Oh,
that.
okay.
Though people that don't like it tend to think that people do like it are psychopaths, from what I can tell.
Well, they would, wouldn't they? They're
Yeah,
not. They're not fun, are they?
no. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to spend a little bit of your time with us and tell us some stories. It's been wonderful talking to you. Where can people find your work? Obviously, YouTube.
Yeah. Well, no, it's been your absolute pleasure to have me on here, actually, Grant. But yeah, I mean, if you want to hit me up, just look up phototripper.com. That's phototripper with an F. You can go to my website or you can go to YouTube and just type in Photo Tripper and my videos will pop up. Or even just going to Google, it should pop up. And yeah, you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on X as well. And yeah, just look it up and watch the videos. And don't forget, Stories Within Stories by Gavin Hardcastle, my latest book. There's a link in the description below.
Thanks a lot, Gavin.
No, thank you very much.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnephotography.com, along with prints and photography gear. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.